elevated.
I don't know if you have. There.
How can you start a library?
Got plenty in the tank.
Sure. Hi to my welcome to this meeting of the Community Board. Just before we get started on our meeting, I just want to share my concerns on behalf of the community and condolences and best thoughts and wishes to those recovering from injuries in the horrific crash that happened on Saturday afternoon, involving quite a few members of the Cromwell community who played or manage or support Sex Potato Dough's rugby team. That is an absolute stalwart of the Cromwell community and has had association with multiple sports groups, with being on Friends of the School for Goldfields Primary, PTA for the college, currently involved in women's rugby and heavily involved in the sports club, is still in a really poor way. We thoughts with her family and with her that she makes a full and speedy recovery. Just before we get going, it's that acknowledgement of that awful incident in the weekend. Oh, on to business. First thing is apologies for today, and I have received apologies from Mary, who has a funeral to attend this afternoon, and Neil, who is unable to be here because of a medical appointment. I have a mover and a seconder for apologies. Thank you. Sarah and Bob need to get my names in. We have no public forum today, so we're straight into our business on page 5, which is the confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting that was held on Thursday, the 18th of May. Are there any items to discuss from those minutes, or can I have a mover and a seconder?
Just a typo on Gordon Stewart is referred to as Mr. Gordon.
Oh,
Potentially. The extra D on Sandford at 1.2.
Oh yeah, 2344. East Sandford.
2344.
42.
Yeah, thank you.
That's quite cool.
So with those changes, moving second. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Wally. All in favour?
Aye.
That takes me to page 10 and the declaration of interests register, and a reminder, a timely reminder to please be vigilant to stand aside from decision making when a conflict arises between your role as a member and any private or other external interests that you might have. And of course, the interests that you have declared are on the table, but if anything comes up in the business of our agenda, if you need to, then please stand aside. I think that Len Foon and Michael Wood have been good examples to us of making sure that we are vigilant in that area. Takes us to page 13 and the item 23.5.2, community outcomes, community ideas for the draft for the long-term plan. So welcome Paula and Christina.
Hello, Tato. Thank you for having us today. So this report's come to you as starting for us to start talking with our communities around the long-term plan for 2024. The first section of this report relates to the community outcomes. So you'll be well aware that the purpose of local government is around us providing for the purpose of our wellbeing present and future generations. And the community outcomes gives us a good steer from what, from a council perspective, is wellbeing looks like, or what good looks like for our communities. So we have put a report to council recommending that we use the community outcomes that were developed for the 2021 long-term plan. And since that time, since that adoption, the asset management plans, the strategies and policies that have been developed are linking to those documents at high level view of what our community's aspirations are. So the proposal is to keep them going for this next triennium, for the next LTP, and in the meantime we'll be working on doing some more work on our communities, gathering information and looking to for that next round of LTP to bring it something different, if it's profoundly different to what we've got. But certainly the information we've had through our communities, conversations we've had over the last 3 years align with what we're seeing in this community. The second part of this report was related to gathering community ideas towards our long-term planning for the 2024 session. So we wanted to make sure that we started our conversations earlier with our community so that we're not just hearing from people at a different time when the budget's already set and things are pretty locked in, so that we can kind of get a feel for what people are sort of just some thoughts and suggestions. Now, bearing in mind that this was on a Let's Talk platform that was basically like post-it notes electronically. So all people had to do was provide an email address and just pop up an idea for thoughts. So we have presented them today with this ideas that are merely just thoughts that come from people, and we would like to share them with you so you can consider them through your thinking and planning going into the later.
Yeah, thanks, Paula. So we'll head to the appendice, which I believe you've got a copy of in front of you here. And the way that it's set out is that we've got the ideas on the left, and then we've got some information for you on the right from staff, giving you an indication on if you'd like to take this idea further, an indication on how much time would be involved with the staff member, and a very, very high level of the cost, and a comment out to the side. So the way we've been working around with the council and other community boards is kind of going line by line and going through, if that's right, through the chair, that we go through that. Absolutely. Okay, perfect. So if we start off with the first one, which is the food truck on the area of the south side of the super liquor, you'll note there that we don't actually own this part of land, and we're looking at a recommendation here that the staff provide information on the Cromwell Spatial Town and Town Centre development projects, plus the Town Centre growth and development opportunities. That would be a good way to feed that idea into current work that we've got going on. Any questions or queries on that one? Yes. Good line one.
Yeah.
What is the deal with the food trucks on Barry Ave and the arrangement you have with who's there, when, how? Like, obviously, this is another version of potentially what's there, so I'm just trying to work out. That's private land. What are they doing on our land there?
Easy.
We know.
Public places like
Public spaces license and in the past saying to have a bylaw, where is it that you want these traders to operate, and that's one of the designated sites. So when they come to us and apply, they can get a license to operate.
So we have set out an area that's a certain size or a number. Is that governed by like number of operators, size,
That's
parking?
by the decision of the board.
Right. So
You
potentially,
don't need to do that, but the
Yeah.
reason why we brought it to the board was so that you could have some input into where the trades were happening.
Yeah.
So when they popped up, you can go and put that in there.
Yeah.
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 And you can review that at any time. Obviously, they have a license now, but going forward, if you want.
what are the renewal terms? Are they annual, the licenses? Yeah.
It seems to me that this is not an ideal spot for that to happen. Right there is very close to a couple of major sort of junctions, and if people are going to be stopping on the road, which they presumably would do, that could cause a problem from a safety point of view. Just seems that they're not really in the right place. If they want to put more food trucks, then presumably Barry Avenue would be a better location for them.
And certainly we couldn't comment because it's not our land as far as from this perspective. So first of all, we don't even know if the landowner would allow it. And then when it came to deciding whether it was the right purpose, I guess the trading in public places, folks do have a chance to discuss that. But in the meantime, there's also a whole town centre redevelopment process going on as part of our Cromwell master plan. That I think that would be also a really good lens to have over that. Where do you want that congregating activity happen?
Right.
Yeah. I think rather than push them to looking at this as an option, maybe spin it a bit and say, hey, we've actually got a space, the parking's good. Don't pursue, like I wouldn't be too keen on us saying, hey, go and approach the landowner.
Yeah.
Why don't we say, hey,
got the space, the parking's good, the access is good, it's close to sport facilities that families are using, crossing the road from the pool, the turf, the school. Maybe we do a bit more around Anderson Park front of there.
What else? Down Alpha Street is another space.
Right in Alpha Street.
Yeah, that's more summer though, isn't it? Like Mr. Whippy's there in everywhere they're on Barry Ave, isn't he? God knows how, but.
And it's decided by the big fruit car.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if the board determined that we needed additional sites, we can certainly look at it. And all is correct. When you're looking at the revitalisation of the town centre, that's the time to say where you think food should be.
Yeah, those pop-ups can enhance more if we put them in the right place. But if we're going to go and say, hey, look, yeah, maybe approach that landowner, we're almost losing something that we could use as a really good add-on for the more.
So trading in public places is roads.
But
and
us,
they may in fact need a resource consent depending on the zoning, so
So we can just deny it.
as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
So what about the sushi track? Arts and stuff, because there's one that's operating
One at the gate.
area now.
And there's one at industrial area, isn't there? Yeah.
I'm not aware of whether that's got a license, but not that I can follow up.
Okay.
Sushi and
There's two sushi ones. There's one at the gate.
There's one
There's-
gate
yeah,
on their land and
Yeah.
their car park.
that's their private space. And there's one by Heinz. As you're going down on the left-hand side.
Is that still real? Is it closed?
Yeah, no, it's only just popped up recently, isn't it? So
It's one here.
and coffee houses tend to be more free ranging.
But that's, yeah, public houses are more free range, so they're different.
Yeah,
be good to I'd rather see it than give them the opportunity to go privately with this. This would be something that we could,
Be what I've got there built.
this could be the very early beginnings of a market type food pop-up, all those things are really, when you're talking about vibrancy in the mall, that does bring foot traffic, so it'd be good to keep hold of it and suggest they go elsewhere.
There's also the heritage precinct.
And yeah,
All right. Thank you. So the next one.
Yeah.
No, but it's good to get everyone here and understand.
That's why we're here and talking about it now. So bike park for peace of mind. Again, this is on an area of Lynn's land. And we could, so the submission was wanting to us to support or council to provide support to facilitate the discussions with Lynn's. And as you can see, that could be possible if the board was wanting to pursue that idea, that we could look at putting that into the draft for consideration into the draft long-term plan, but would need to get the fact that the community really is driving this.
what do you think, Wally?
So, I mean, this proposal is part of a much bigger proposal where council could facilitate licences to occupy around the lake edge, and I think council put that aside at the council meeting, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So can we assume that council would support on a smaller scale a licence to occupy, for example, over a piece of land for a bike park?
I think that that's something that you need to look at promoting, is because it was your idea, is that right, Wally?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'd be something that probably is most appropriate to pursue through the avenue of the community board, what they're looking at and their aspirations.
Right.
So what the submitters requesting is really facilitation support with council, community board to talk to Lynn's, but it would be a community-led project, but it's opening up more recreation land or land that could be used for recreation purposes.
Yeah, that's right. There's plenty of land out there, but it's not council controlled, and Lynn's to deal with. So I think council or the community board's got more clout when it comes to those discussions, in my experience.
So it does say further investigation required. What does that mean?
So what that means is that there would need to be further investigation required. So looking at really a feasibility study done on that item, or even a wider item, which is more coming from the community board around opportunities, around the edge, which is being looked at as a part of the input and feedback we received from the community board into the long term.
There's some elements to gauge overall community support and how it would run into the future, to understand what the legalities and ongoing commitment would be for the community board if they were to take over to occupy community activities. So there's a little bit of groundwork that needs to be done if we stepped into it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so you'd want the community group who wants to drive a bike park or pump track project to be really invested in the project before you started.
Absolutely, because we've got a lot to do on our own land. So if you're going to take us on and make sure it is the community use.
Fine with that one, move on.
Irrigation and shade in Cromwell Park. So this is mainly to do with irrigation, and the area that they're talking about is actually privately owned land. So it's more sort of going back to the submission, just communicating what areas are council owned and what are actually privately owned. So a bit of education around that. Yeah. Retain and maintain all green spaces. That's, for example, the rugby, the bowling, soccer, hockey grounds. And that's looking at that open places, spaces strategy, which is in the process of being developed. And again, encouraging the submitter to, again, voice those opinions through that process that is already in train. Yes. Yep. Yep.
Quiet for you.
Yeah, quiet is good. Very good. Turn a portion of the mall into an outlet store.
Don't do that.
So again, that can be considered through the Cromwell Town Centre redevelopment project, but obviously it's got to be a joint initiative, yes, because we don't own the shops in that area. And the next one is about the golf course. If it ends up being reallocated and redeveloped as proposed in the spatial plan, they're wanting to have plenty of room for additional park-like area and not just greenways. Just to confirm that the Cromwell Golf Club lease doesn't expire until 2023 and that any redevelopment would be in consultation with the include community input at that point.
Yep.
Affordable housing, in particular, GEAR app, and you'll see that in Appendix 2. There's a copy of the GEAR estate plan, and it's an approach which includes a higher density approach to allow for more affordable accommodation already. So again, providing that to the submitter. The camping and also the recreational hub sort of goes sort of together there, as that's got to do with the potential around the equestrian centre. And just to clarify that the camping is very much that has been mentioned to the race course, but not discussed in any detail at this point. Any other questions or queries on that one?
It's not really what it says here. It says discussions are currently underway. No, it has been mentioned.
Yeah, sure. Gareth, do you have anything more to add to that?
So, I mean, we've mentioned to them that Boy is going to be booking a series of meetings with the Equestrian Club to discuss what the future of that facility and all its land holdings is going to be. So we'll get into more details there when we come back. Right.
Okay, next one is bins for dog poo. And this was quite an interesting one to look into, because this is something that the council staff are considering and already sort of looking into these options. You can see the costs there and the ongoing costs for doing something like this. Also, there needs to be a bit of a process looked at as to where the best position of these dog bins could be and how they're funded. The potential is to be funded through the dog registration, and if it's not on council land, then there would need to be some consultation as well with the landowners. So again, it's something that is in frame, but it's whether you would like to then really incorporate it into the next draft long-term plan, that idea of looking into that. Staff time is looking sort of in the medium range, and price is sort of under that 20k mark. That depends on the number of bins. Yeah. Yes, question.
I've been asked for ages, I've been patient.
Yeah.
Seeing as I know quite a bit about what we're doing with our green lid bins and our red bins, but dog poo doesn't go in bags anymore.
Yeah.
So are we looking at this with a viable option for poo that's not in bags to it, or are we going against our policy of putting poos in bags in a bin that we've then got to recycle, if we've got a landfill?
So it was definitely that lens needs to be put across it as well, and that is something that the department was looking at as well. When you look at this, then you've also got to look at the lens of encouraging people to take it home and put it in, you know, it's.
Yeah, because either way, a bag doesn't go in the green waste bin either way, but I'd wonder if like a straight bag in a bin option is obviously the easiest one, but maybe there's something wider that we could look for a solution for people so they can actually do what we're asking them to do with that waste as well.
Sure.
You know, like that's one of the questions I've been asked quite a lot. Like, you know, when you're out and you've got a bag full of, what do you do with it? Well, it goes in the bin, but then it goes in your red bin.
Yeah.
And your red bin stinks for 2 weeks because we're only collecting red bins every 2 weeks.
Yes.
We're giving you an option that's not really that practical with the green bin. That's some of the feedback I'm getting, I guess.
Okay.
And even when you're walking a dog, how do you?
Well, what do you do? Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you have to have some sort of vessel that you can
Yeah.
carry that's totally.
But is there something that's compostable or, but I don't know, like, I don't know.
Or a bit of a
You keep cutting.
opportunity. Big benefit.
But I mean, that's definitely a lens to try over. Whenever you're providing bins anywhere, you need to start thinking of that, and also putting the new lens of the services that we're offering here. Hey, maybe it's actually a scoop that you put it in the bin, and then that bin is actually your green bin.
Poop in this vicinity where the scoop on a chain will reach.
Isn't that poop scoop idea?
Mate, right,
Yeah.
must leave now.
So certainly one option to be able to somehow put the poo in the bin without using a bag would be ideal.
Throw it out to the schools as a design innovation.
We shouldn't throw it out.
I don't know. Are you? And I would hate to see us do work that is in isolation,
Contradiction.
doing something, and then it totally contradicts what we're trying to do with the waste. It would be really cool to be able to say we're actually looking at this bigger picture and come up with something cool, maybe even.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. We can feed that back through, but whether it's something that you'd like to.
I think it would be good. Like it's
But put that lens over it.
yeah, and it's been a problem on sports fields lately. I know this season particularly we've had on the netball courts, believe it or not, there's been dog poo twice this season. You know that because I think Joe's views on in the rugby grounds and well, no, anyway.
Yeah.
But there's more. That's what I mean. It's not just saying, "Oh, hey, here's back," because there's dogs where there shouldn't be.
Yep,
There's
definitely
obviously-
policy, and putting bins, Christina's exactly right. Putting bins in the past was seen as a bit of a solution, but now that we've got the green bins and plastic and whatever, we do need to put that lens over it and think very carefully about where we're putting bins and how that might.
Yeah, and dogs.
And dogs, totally. And that's always hard because that's down to dog owners.
And dogs wandering.
Yep, absolutely.
The next one here is build a Cromwell multi-site similar to Balclutha's recreation centre as a hub for the Central Otago and lakes.
Do it.
So that is again really the recommendation is to feed that through to that open spaces strategy and have a look at it as the whole rather than Cromwell. Have a look at it as a regional. Then we're down to limited spaces bicycle locks around the Cromwell Mall and local parks. And we can feed this idea into the Cromwell Town Centre redevelopment project, the idea of having areas where it's suitable to provide your own lock and lock it up. A cover, so this is a shade sail idea of Alpha Street Playground. And this one could be potentially what we've called a quick win in this. So under 50k, it's pretty low time with staff to put it in, and the idea could be included if that's something.
And I think that it might be a quick win for that one playground, but it is then going to open up the why haven't we done the same for the Cecil Anderson Park, and why haven't we done the same for the Bannockburn Domain Park? I know that other people have heard. I've had an email from a community member about Bannockburn. I'm sure that
That's just the feedback from Terrace as well.
yeah. So it just might mean that if you're looking at one park, that it might be a range of parks that.
Yeah, well, I guess that is, if you want to look at it as a range of parks.
And I think we should, as a well-being.
Yes, like that for children. Is that a direction you'd like?
So
I think we need to look at.
just to the chair, so we are working through our play strategy, which will also determine what a play value it has, and I guess shade sales will come into that as well. Shade of some sort.
Yeah.
And we prioritising them for busy playgrounds clearly over
less busy.
playground.
But are the less busy playgrounds less busy because there's no shade?
That's all good. Location.
But as a facility, a playground with shade, they should be part and parcel. If we've got a budget for a playground as a whole, it would make sense that a portion of that was, that it was usable.
And I think that's shaded with the new playground on the Big Fruit Reserve.
Now we can put the shade.
But yeah, then it's
a delinquent
about
discussion.
those existing playgrounds, yeah.
So is the conclusion need to actually feed it through to
The play.
the play strategy and then come out so you've got a direction on all playgrounds?
So likely timeframe on that piece of work.
Within the next 12 months.
You can put a sport play.
All right, that's yeah.
DIY. Get some dads.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, it's easy.
So that takes us back to, from the appendix, back to page 13, which is to the recommendations that we received the report and accept the level of significance. B notes the existing community outcomes will be used in development of the draft 2024 to 34 long-term plan. And C considers the community ideas and agrees on the action that should be taken with we get into our conversations. Over a seconder, please. Thank you, Sarah and Bob. All in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. They take us to page 20 and the request by the Cromwell Squash Club to make improvements within the exterior lifts area.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So you know, this is Helen's first paper.
Oh,
Welcome, Helen.
where would you like? Good. Where are we going?
To put me off forever or just...
Down you up easy or going?
So Helen has introduced us from the community team here in Cromwell. We have represented at the moment the Cromwell Squash Club, who have made a request to council in regards to being able to concrete an area outside of their building and also put some fencing up as per the details in the document that I provided. Has anybody got any questions?
Makes sense.
Looks good.
Get them to.
Questions on
Let's say, I know I heard about this a wee while ago, and they were saying the contractor that they'd got that was keen to do it, they wanted to get it quite quick. Have we missed the boat because this has had to come here, or are they still able to do that? And
We missed that opportunity and to be able to do it because we needed to bring it to the meeting, but
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be another opportunity for them to.
but they're confident they can still get that done. That'll be sorry.
All right, so it's actually on page 19 and the recommendations are that the Cromwell Community Board receives the report and accepts the level of significance. B approves the request by the Cromwell Squash Club to make improvements to the exterior of their building to concrete two areas that are currently stoned soil area and install a low fence, and C that we authorise the Chief Executive to do all that's necessary to give effect to the resolution. Do we have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Cheryl and Wally. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Helen. That was very smooth first.
You need to lift it.
We can't imagine they were.
And the next item is actually on page 20. The brand sheet's just kind of put us today, which is the Cromwell Sports Field Demand Analysis Update. That's quite a mouthful, Gordy, but welcome.
Thank you. So the Queenstown Lakes and Central Otago Regional Sports and Recreation Facility Strategy, which was done in 2018, identified the racecourse reserve as an area that could accommodate sports growth should the existing sports fields areas within Cromwell become constrained. And to determine the current and future demand of both the existing sports areas and Cromwell Racecourse, we engaged a consultant to undertake a demand for future demand for sports fields, existing and future demand for sports fields. And as you can see, there's 13 recommendations for consideration in the short, medium and long term. That's like 10, 20 and 30 years time frame. And what is clear though is the fields are at capacity now for some sports, and then an area of around 3 hectares plus associated facilities will be required over the next 10 years or so to provide space for recreation for the projected population growth in Cromwell. There are some suggestions to consider that may extend this timeframe out a bit, such as realignment of the rugby fields and soccer fields, but further investigation and sort of a cost-benefit analysis would need to be done on those, and we will do those for the considerations through the long-term plan. I'm thinking it's going to cost quite a lot of money, and we're only going to get a couple of years out of it. We better to invest in a new place, a new facility somewhere else. So, and the next step will be just to discuss the report with the equestrian club and other sports groups, and just check their views on that. And we can come back to the board with some of the other stuff that is also highlighted in the report. So happy to answer any questions.
Well, yeah, I think we've got plenty actually, because there seem to be an awful lot of inaccuracies in this report. I mean, I question really why we've actually got the report at all, because a lot of this information actually could have been obtained simply by talking to the various sporting groups without the need to get consultants involved. They seem to have got the population estimates wrong. And some of the recommendations, when we get on to that, we've been talking, for example, about the Alpha Street facility for a number of years and about how inadequate the changing facilities and so on are. And yet we've got it down as something that's going to be dealt with in the medium term. I would have thought that was pretty urgent that something's done there pretty quickly. I mean, that's my first thought. My second thought really is that there are quite a number of sports organisations that haven't even been consulted at all. The one that comes to mind, and it's obvious for me, is the golf club. Nobody's actually mentioned anything about the golf club at all. The golf club is actually the biggest sporting club in the whole of Central Otago, and yet nobody consulted them. We've got a new athletics club, which has recently been formed. There's no mention of that at all. There's another one actually that I noticed that, but nobody consulted the hockey club, for example. So I actually think that this report is very flawed.
So I'll respond to all that, if you like.
Yeah.
So firstly, the golf wasn't included because it's not an active sport. The council maintains the grounds for, so it's not, and council only owns a part of that area. Population projections were provided by council's own, by Nick Lenham actually. So that's where they are. And remember, this report's nearly a year old, so they may have changed since then. The athletics club we're not aware of because I don't think they booked any grounds for us, and they may, if they went around this time last year, they haven't been consulted either. Hockey are a separate organisation, and they have a separate strategy for that, and we also don't manage that piece of land. That's a leased area which they manage, and is a constrained site. So the idea of the report was to look at the areas of sport, the grounds that council actually manage, and what their constraints and future demands for them are. That's what it was about. It wasn't talked about all sports clubs there. A lot of them don't impact on the demand of the council's grounds.
Yeah, I mean, I I'd say that there are quite a number of sports that don't actually operate in Cromwell because there are no facilities for them. So wouldn't it have been a good idea to talk to those organisations and say, well, what do you need?
Can you provide some examples, please? I can do that. Who?
Athletics was the one we were talking about, just it
Right.
hasn't existed.
No.
Right, I was actually part of setting that up this year, and we've had to go through schools to get the grounds and the space working.
We
that.
did, but they're not a significant big user at this time of the grounds. So we've used those sports clubs that we know are existing and are growing, such as football, rugby, cricket, netball.
So netball in the comments about netball in 5.2, page 35, it states that the junior competition is based in Anderson Park. I think all junior netball is actually played in Alexandra. Only the Fun Ferns, which is pre-competition age group, are based at Anderson Park.
As part of their practice.
Yeah.
That's what they incorporate that, yeah.
So practices are held at Anderson Park, but I don't think there's any competition there at this point.
So that's interesting because the surveys were sent directly to the clubs who directly replied to them.
Yeah.
And then a consultant went and talked to all the clubs individually, got all the information as well. So somehow.
Now, I'm not involved in junior netball.
No, nor must. And I'm agreeing that, that's fine. Thank you.
But you are involved in junior netball. And
Yeah.
You've got children from age 4 to
12.
12.
And, yeah, sports
And,
club and college based because they're two different entities, netball, unlike the other sports.
I think it's fine, the information, but I think the point we're making is not a.
Yeah, I know, we're just saying that those are, yeah. So the sports may have provided that, and maybe with the upgrade of the courts they had intended to run junior competition in Cromwell, but obviously haven't got that across the Netball Association, etc.
Okay.
Gordy, can you tell me on that map, 1.1, the study area, that population and the area and the people we're talking about, everything else, that looks like we're not taking into account any of the fairly significant numbers of the population that live outside of that black line, would that be right?
That was what, 2.1?
1.1 there, the study area itself, it says Cromwell Town.
That's where, because that's where
Is
the
that-
facilities are.
But I know that's where, obviously, that's where the facilities are that we're looking at, but the population, does that relate to just what's in that geographical area? Have we got,
The population of 1.2, 2.1 was the Cromwell Ward, I believe.
ward as a whole?
Yeah.
But it's,
Nothing big enough.
it does say Cromwell Town,
It does
Yeah.
say that.
yeah.
So Cromwell Town and Cromwell Ward are significantly different, and
From our board include Queensbury Terrace, right?
yeah, and like we've got kids that travel from. I know most of the sports I'm including Terrace all the way through to Nevis. They come through because Cromwell's the base. That's quite a significant difference to service in the town.
I can check that with Nick if you like, but that's the information.
The numbers just seem low to me looking at that, but I wonder if that would be why. Because if we're only taking that where the facilities are, go look at the user group, I guess, for those facilities. It's quite a bit bigger.
Which may demand.
Quite significantly different. You know, like if you're going from all the kids from Terrace, Queensbury through.
This is a good opportunity for your feedback, which is why Gordy has put it to you. As he's mentioned, this relied on the sports codes actually responding, and if the information is not correct, then we do have an opportunity to go back and correct it. Bob, your comment about using a consultant, the consultant did exactly what you suggested and contacted the sports clubs, but we don't have the capacity in-house. And to keep things moving, sometimes we'll use a consultant who will go out and do their work for us. So, yeah, we could have done it ourselves, but it might have taken quite a lot longer to get to it.
Can I just ask about the report seems, it's sort of half about the current sports needs, but also half about the opportunities and usage at the racecourse. Is there scope to change? I mean, that doesn't even include the racecourse, I don't think. But is there scope to consider wider than that? Like when you're talking about sports fields, there could be strategic property acquisitions. If you saw some good low-lying land, for example, council might want to go for that to put eight fields on. If it was nice and flat. Because are we just working with what's immediately available to us? Or can we cast the net wider to look at the potential strategy here?
Well, that's an option, but what the report is to look at what council currently owns. Investing in 8 hectares of reserve is would be a pretty expensive exercise.
Yeah.
When it's got land that it already owns, and the purpose of the report is to see how we can rearrange that land to see if we can fit all the users that need it over the next 30 years into it. So, and if not, then is that an option? Invest in land elsewhere, more neighbourly, and spreading sport, as you know, spreading different sports around means parents and kids have to travel. All on one day to different grounds. So if you can have a hub type set up, that's much more efficient for the users as well as the sort of maintenance and operation.
I'd like to comment, sorry, about the race course. A year or so ago, the board indicated to us that they were interested in what the race course might look like. So Gordy and Gareth had a conversation with the race course. They had come to us for funding for irrigation and they had a business plan prepared. And so at that time, we decided we needed to look at it holistically because in the spatial plan, there was kind of a sketch of a sports facility in there. So taking a bigger look right across, and this piece of work is part of that to inform where we go in the future. And it's still, it is a snapshot in time of what we have. Yep.
So in the item around community outcomes and community ideas, in the appendix for that, item number 46 appendix is about camping needs in Cromwell, and it talks about the race course land as well. So are we trying to are we going to end up putting a camping ground on it that we've then got to tear down because we're putting sports fields on it? So is that the right hand's talking to the left hand here?
Yeah, we are. So part of that's talking to the equestrian club as well. What are the options? And as you can see by this report, that I guess the race course is a pretty busy place for horse-related activities, and it's us, I guess, drilling down and seeing what that means and what can be incorporated in other sporting ways into that space, as well as have those existing uses continue on that spot.
And the possibility of a race camping ground.
Racing, what's happening, but and the camping ground maybe as well. Yes, you're right. You wouldn't put in a whole lot of PowerPoints to pull them out in 10 years.
There's things to be quite a. I mean, and I'm well aware that there's been quite a lot of conversation over several years around future of racing, which is a much bigger conversation than this table, but also around the racecourse reserve and what's actually used for equestrian purposes and what's is not used for anything other than grazing. So
yeah, so that's important. So our next step is to talk to the club, the equestrian club, work through some of these predicted demand for that space, what their demands are. This in here as well, and then I guess work forward a bit of a plan and keep coming back to the board with updates as we go through those processes. Anyway,
I think they've got in their business plan, which is this document, got some pretty good suggestions in there about the amount of space that they've got there and what it could be used for, and that obviously is going to form the basis for your conversation with them.
That's right, and that's a great starting point.
Yeah.
Of the 11 or so clubs that are horse-related clubs that use the racecourse ground, do they come to council on an annual or 5-year basis about their rights to use the place, or how's that managed?
So the council has a lease with the equestrian Southern Equestrian Club.
Yeah.
And they
sublease
or rent those spaces out, so they don't come to council at all.
Mm-hmm.
And they use that income to reinvest into the grounds.
I was thinking, reading the report, the idea of installing irrigation there now is probably not a stupid one if there is eventually, dare I say it, eventually, maybe going to be sports fields out there. If a bore and water supply could get established, that won't be for nothing as horse racing. finishes in
Well,
a couple of decades, for example.
They've got a board there already. It's just a question of getting the water apparently from that bore to where it's needed. The bore is already there.
With the pump and infrastructure and stuff, or is it just a drill hole? Yeah.
The way is, you've joined us at the table.
Yeah, it's sort of.
For the meeting.
So,
Shout from the front.
yeah. So the idea is to work through all of the issues and ultimately have a reserve management plan for the race course. So that will inform where you invest, because you will know the future, and that will have the community consultation part. This is kind of the beginning step that understands the sports usage of the areas we manage, and there's obviously race course stuff in there. And of course, we've got a regional facilities plan that we make decisions under as well. So it's just pulling all that together, getting a reserve management plan. So when you do make a decision around any investment, including irrigation, it will be in the right place with the future in mind.
And the report clearly shows there's going to be a demand for more sports fields
Absolutely.
over the period, so we need to start planning.
So the hockey turf is probably a concern, however, in terms of the fact that it is a single turf, isn't it? It's a single playing field. And I know that there's a fabulous trust and committee who have pulled that facility together and maintained it. But do you think that council will have to play a part in providing provision for more space for that sport in the future?
Yes.
Alongside the hockey club, yeah, for them if they need to expand, because there is, from what I can gather, an awful lot of kids playing hockey and not a lot of grounds for them to play on.
Yes, so I guess hockey is an interesting one to talk about. I know Sport New Zealand are undertaking an actual hockey strategy, working on it.
Lots of strategies though.
There's lots. And we do have these hockey turfs. You know, we know that Molyneux Turf Trust is looking to have one. And we've been thinking of having one in Alexandra for a while. We've just updated the surface out of Omaka, and I know the Manitoto board are having a discussion on Thursday about one of the Manitoto schools. So part of the Molyneux turf one is they're undertaking they're undertaking a business plan and a demand on, you know, where the numbers are coming from, whether the numbers are still high or not for hockey. The last one we had was 2018.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see where they all are. You know, people were saying coming to Cromwell from the Manitoto to play games is.
Yeah, well, I now know there's quite a lot of kids driving out of Cromwell to play hockey.
Yeah.
We're being dominated.
Yeah, and Queenstown and Monarch have got smaller fields as well. So it's just how does that work out, I guess, regionally, as the other impact that doing too much, putting other fields in might make the one here less viable, because they, as you know, they will come here and it's fully utilised. So if it was less fully utilised, then there's going to be shortage of income to run it. So there's quite a lot of balls in the air in hockey at the moment.
So some years ago, Central Trust commissioned a study on hockey, because we were getting a lot of requests from different areas about their own turf, and the numbers came back that Molyneux can't support it, and we haven't seen evidence of that changing at all. The study was accepted by Central Otago Hockey, and I think the big issue is that it's making sure that this turf is viable and also not splitting the competition, which is something that's got to be all about, because this is the feeder for all from Central Otago and Southern Lakes.
One of the issues is that this turf costs to rent out. Full disclosure, I'm a trustee of the Turf Trust. I'm a member of the Board of Central Otago Hockey and a member of the Cromwell Hockey Club. So I've got a finger in every one of those pies, and I've talked to myself in circles for 15 years over it. There's two issues that you're looking at it as a sport in isolation, because it looks like it's got a facility which is enough. And in actual fact, when that demand is on, much like football, we don't have capacity to support what we need to do here. We need we need to look at what they use. We've got a full turf here, which is adequate to be the only full turf. What the study's done is looked at that, and we probably could expand that and say a half turf is what we're missing, because all of the junior from 12 and under play on a half turf. So obviously that's 2 games at a time here. Oamcow, Ramfurley, Manisoto School, Alex have all got turfs that are almost half turf, but not quite. So don't quite tick the box, but they're almost good enough. What hockey are looking at is if there's an option for a half turf somewhere. Alex would be good for us to work together and put a half turf there so those junior games could play, because that's where you've got that capacity issue. And that's what it came back with, didn't it? Yeah. So supporting all of that, the underlying issue here with the Turf Trust is that we pay a lot to maintain and run that building and the turf, that if any of that rental cost goes elsewhere, because those Alex clubs are playing on that side, then the cost to the user here goes up because there's less rental. So that's what we're most mindful of with the Turf Trust, is that the building alone costs to run. So it's making sure we don't lose that income to run this. What would be really good is, I don't feel that report goes anywhere deep enough across sports. It's gone very singular. What do you do? What do you do? In my mind, being aware of so many of them, with hockey in particular, you could put a multi-turf down that hockey could use for junior hockey, because it doesn't matter how long the grass is, what the pile is, whatever. Soccer could play on there, rugby could train on there, and hockey could use that as their spillover. But putting it, then working out where it goes is all you need to do. Not just say, oh, hockey's fine, it's self-sufficient, they've got a turf, and football's at capacity. But actually, I think we need to look at the sports crossing over and it being a sports field, not a rugby ground, soccer ground, hockey ground, because we're doubling up.
And that's exactly what they did over QLDC.
Yeah. Yeah, and they built it 4 metres too short for a proper hockey turf, God knows why.
And soccer, right.
So you've raised some really good points, Sarah, and we're really conscious about the risk of investment in too many facilities that need to stand up themselves.
Yeah.
And also, as Gordy said, splitting the competition and messing up the sport, which makes it worse. So all of that's in the mix. And of course, what you're suggesting is probably a more detailed study.
Yeah, I think in my mind, the report gives us some information. I don't feel like I've learned anything by reading it. And I mean, I think it grossly underestimates where we're at, but where we're going in the near term future. Like, to me, that's in the next 5 years. I know every sport my kids are involved in, we're at capacity. Netball, we're playing in the week because they can't fit us in on Saturday. And that's 2 junior grades. Hockey, we're sending kids from Cromwell to Queenstown to play at different times because we can't fit them all in here. You know, all those sports were at absolute capacity. Cromwell, using hockey because it's what I know, Cromwell's got the biggest junior club and the most successful junior club because we have the facility here.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's indicative that it's easy for the kids to get to the turf. So hockey is really popular here, whereas maybe in Alex it's not so much. But if you look at the facilities they've got, Alex play the home games at Oamcow, which isn't quite straightforward. So I think as a community board, we need to be mindful that we're not playing this Alex versus Cromwell game and you want it, we want it. Look bigger. And I know a lot of this says, oh, regional. We're not here to discuss regional, but if we don't look at that bigger picture and work in, we're doing ourselves a disservice. That I can see that this town could pull off a sports hub.
So we do definitely talk regional, which is why when anyone comes to us for funding, we say that the community boards need a feasibility that looks across the region. And we've met with, when Susan was on Central Lakes Trust, we met with them and some sports clubs to say, this is what CLT need, this is similar information for community boards so that you're making decisions with a regional lens on it. I think the purpose of this is really around land capacity at a broad term to make sure that we're making decisions along the way that don't limit us in the future because of growth, and it isn't as granular enough as saying exactly what everybody needs where, and that might be.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's next year. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I think part of some of the constraints, and it's mentioned here for football, I think, is the way they run their competitions as well with the clubs, and now they're putting everybody every 4 weeks around 4 different venues. They've been using out.
It's all or nothing.
Yeah.
That's junior. That's
Yeah.
junior.
Yeah. So under
Which has been the biggest.
11, I think under
Yes,
12.
which is still an issue.
Yeah.
And how they run those. So, and so they all need to be taken into consideration. as well.
And those things need to work hand in hand. Like the sports that I'm involved in, definitely your capacity reaches a point where we've got more than 2 kids and there's only 2 parents, so we're only going to 2 places. So as soon as a third venue is introduced with a third kid, we lose that sport. You know, so being mindful that sports working together
Yeah, hubs
as well. Yeah, but you know, multi sports in town, like we're lucky this year. I'm organising a hockey draw that we've made sure the hockey draw is in the same town as football, and our numbers went up for both because the kids could go to one in the morning and then they could jump over town and go to the other one. So that's the sports hub that's mentioned in there in the collective. We've actually done some work with Joe Knight from Sports Central recently, and we're going to pick that up in August as a community forum to try and get every sport into a meeting together and try and get that hub established. And they're looking at setting that up as a charitable status initiative to grow this from there. But I think it's, yeah, I just think it misses the urgency in the report. Like I think it's got some good key points, but I don't think it's anywhere near enough. I think we need to be aware we need to be much bigger and bolder.
Yeah, I think we need to reiterate it wasn't about every sport, and
I know.
it was about do we need a chunk of land for sports? I mean, what is going to play on the land at some point, which is the next level, which is the grand level.
If that next level is significant.
Yeah.
The user impact, isn't it?
And then we've got to think, where is that chunk of land going to go? Can it go in the race course, or do we have to do the Wally's example of buying something somewhere? So there's still a bit to go through all this year.
Thank you for the discussion. I am going to pull us back to page 24. Because the recommendation there is that the report be received. I have a mover and a seconder that we've received the report. Cheryl, Sarah, all in favour?
Right.
That's page 42. And we've got Donna, Susan, not Donna. Susan, welcome. Thank you. And we have the Cromwell Financial Report for the period ending the 31st of March 2020.
So just bear in mind that it is the 31st of March, so some things have happened since then, obviously, but I'll take the report as being read, just highlighting under the grants and subsidies that we've got the 118k in there, which we've got through Better Off funding to assist with the pool liner replacement project. So Brody's onto that one already. Also, internal interest revenue is favourable, largely due to the
enormous interest rates.
More so the capital program. So as we just go through the steps of design, etc., for the Cromwell Master Plan projects, in our forecasting models, it's very difficult to get that down to sort of like a monthly basis. It's sort of almost like an average over the year sort of thing. So just as far as expenditure is concerned, the subdivision for Cemetery Road is coming through in May. So your cost of sales for those land sales actually comes through the accounts as well. And just, the main reason for the favourable variance in the capital expenditure is this master plan capital project. Almost there. Almost about starting
To be expensive, but not
soon to be expensive. Yeah. So we're going to carry those, anything that's hasn't been spent, which is actually quite considerable this year. There was a chunk of about 7 or 8 million in there in this current year, so that level there.
The Cromwell swimming pool had an overall favourable variance of 110k, but is that going to be used up with this extra coil that's getting installed on?
No, that's
Separate.
That's within the budget.
and part of the budget for that.
Yeah.
That's not extra.
Does that include paying GST?
Any further questions?
Some good green dots. It's good.
If there's no further questions, I'll come us back to page 42 and recommendation that the report be received. Over in a second. Bob, thank you. Wally, all in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks, Susan. And then to page 48, we've lost the mayor, then we might skip him. But we'll come back to the mayor's report and go into page 49. Date you on. I've been up to that meeting. So when was that last meeting? 18th of May. The 18th of May, I had a wonderful couple of days in Matilda. This was a professional learning group, thinking about leadership. It was really, really good experience. I've been working alongside resource teacher learning and behaviour. We're bringing Liz Kane, who's a literacy specialist, to Cromwell to provide learning opportunities for teachers across the district, which is really fantastic, and it's been funded by the resource teacher of literacy and the resource teachers of learning and behaviour, which means it's of no cost to schools. On the 15th, I ran the Dunstan Zone Primary School Swimming Champs.
Very well.
At the Cromwell swimming pool. We had about 175 swimmers from across the Dunstan zone attending that day, competing for places in the Central Otago Swim Champs, which will be held in Wanaka next week. I attended the Matt Chisholm evening at Cromwell College on Thursday of last week. Matt very capably and with a lot of humour and self-preoccupation spoke about his battles with alcohol, drug addiction and mental health, to highlight the need for us to be mindful of men's mental health and the masculine culture around rugby and being a bloke in rural New Zealand. There were about 170 people from the Cromwell community who attended that event that was sponsored by 45 South Management and Cromwell Kāhui Airport. It was a really interesting and well-attended event, and I think that Nat's book will probably be a very good read. I think that's what I've been up to. That's my report. Oh, Museum Trust, got to say that then. Went to their meeting on Monday of last week on the 12th. They talked a lot about the Central Otago Museum Trust meeting that was held in Naseby, where that group has a grant from the Ministry of Culture and Heritage, where they're moving to a Museum 100 project across the district, where each of our local museums is looking at some interesting objects that they're going to put forward for that. They're applying for grants, as they do regularly, to fund their exhibitions, and they're looking pretty strong in terms of their annual reporting for this year. The museum will be taken over by Goldfields Primary School from the beginning of next week, to where they are hosting our art exhibition over the last week of the school term and school holidays, which we're very grateful for. And then I'll actually move on.
Second. Oh, you do that.
So, Tim,
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Sorry, I had to step out. Ironically, I was attending a Zoom meeting for mayors and CEs on the future of local government report, which will be released tomorrow. So it was in the highest of secrecy what was in the report, and while the meeting was being held, staff released what was in the report. So anyway, that'll be tomorrow's stuff to be dealt with, literally. It's good to be here today. I recognise I've had a bad run of other commitments having dragged me away from the Cromwell Community Board. Please don't take it personally. It's just Yeah, it's just, I recognise it has been a bad run, so it's great to see you all. Things are a bit quieter for me. Winter, as Mayor, does quieten down because your AGMs and your evening meetings and your weekend events don't tend to happen as much in winter. So that's quite a blessed relief. A lot of the time since we've last met has actually been spent with the selection process for the new CEO. We had 51 candidates that included a number of current CEs from around the country in the local government sector, which I think the quality of the candidates all round showed how well Central Otago is doing and how well the council as a whole is doing, taking it as a great sign of encouragement. You will be aware, of course, that we've employed, signed Peter Kelly. He's the current CEO of Upper Hutt City Council. Comes to us with 5 years experience of that, and before that he was the head of the New Zealand Army. So he brings quite a diverse range of leadership experience. He'll be starting with us on the 11th of September. And tomorrow, getting a little bit ahead of myself, I'll be helping the Cromwell Youth Trust as part of Volunteer Week serve breakfast to pupils at Cromwell College early in the morning. Each week they do that a couple of times, which is fantastic, just to make sure students get a decent breakfast, learn about nutrition and set up for the day. So I'm really looking forward to that. The only other thing I had a note of, normally when I do these reports, I'd say I've attended a Cromwell business breakfast, but they haven't been happening. And I think that's actually a hell of a shame. They've shifted to an afternoon format, which from what I understand, numbers are well down. Afternoons are generally difficult for me. And so I haven't been able to attend. And I go to Cromwell, I go to Teviot, I go to Maniatoto, I go to one of the Alex ones regularly, and they're just a great way to connect with the business community and find out what's happening in that side, and that's now lacking, certainly for me. With the Cromwell businesses, it's awfully hard to get around them all one by one, so just note that I can't report to you what's happening there. That's really my report, unless there's any questions.
Oh, Holly, over. That takes us to our members' reports, and I'm going to go this way this week.
Okay. I'd just like to reiterate what Mayor Tim has said about the business breakfast. I used to attend those myself, and I found them very useful. And it's a damn shame that they've actually changed to an afternoon format, because I can't attend. So
I would reiterate, it's quite hard to get away from your work day to get there, so maybe that feedback needs to be.
I think they have looked at mixing it up potentially. Feedback's definitely been received by Amy that so hopefully we do.
Right, on Tuesday the 9th of May, I attended the monthly meeting of the Cromwell District Promotions Group, which was a monthly planning meeting for Light Up Winter, which is coming up in early August. On Thursday the 1st of June, I attended a presentation by the Central Otago and Queenstown Trail Network Trust. Bit of a mouthful. The Lake Dunstan Trail, which opened in May 2021, has welcomed 144,595 users in those 2 years. 84,861 in the first year and 59,734 in year 2. Those figures are measured from the counter, which is adjacent to the Carrot Vineyard, so they're probably pretty conservative because it doesn't measure traffic going both ways. That trail has recently been announced as the 23rd Great New Zealand Ride, which is quite an accolade. The main purpose of the presentation was to announce the progress on the Kaora Trail, the route for which has now been finalised and all negotiations with the landowners are completed. Tenders are going out in July, and the construction is going to start by the end of this year. The trail is going to cross the river twice at the Victoria Bridge and at Citron Point. They also announced that the route has been finalised for the extension of the trail from Pisa Moorings to Albert Town. And when this trail is constructed, it will feature a bridge crossing the Clutha River, which will be the longest pedestrian cyclist suspension bridge in New Zealand. And the Trust members are expecting that this will become a tourist attraction in its own right. And finally, the Trust is going to be changing its name for simplicity to the Southern Lakes Trails Trust.
That's easier.
Yep. On Monday, the 12th of June, I attended the AGM of Old Cromwell Inc. Nothing really very much to report there, except that they reappointed all the previous board members, apart from Jess Sutherland, who stood down actually, but she's made herself available to be co-opted as required. The meeting was actually interrupted by Bernie McCone from the Rotary Club, who presented the Paul Harris Fellowship to Barbara Emmett. The fellowship's the highest award that the Rotary Club can award, and it's named after the founder of the Rotary Club, and it's awarded for outstanding services to the community. And I think everybody will agree it's well deserved. On Tuesday, the 13th of June, I attended a monthly meeting of the Central Otago, the Cromwell and District Promotions Group, which was a planning meeting for Light Up Winter. That's my report.
Yeah. I feel like I'm really busy and I'll sit here and listen to Bob talk and think, I haven't got a lot to tell you. I'm going to do quite a page of stuff. The last month is all about junior sports in winter, so that is mostly my life, and I could share much, but I won't. But suffice to say that, with the report that we've just heard there, junior sport is thriving in Cromwell, growing, is having capacity issues in many sports that we're looking at, but it's certainly something that is going well for us, and our kids are very active in Cromwell, and that's something that I'm pleased to live here with my children, but also really strongly encourage everybody to get involved and help make that work moving forward, because there's a lot to do and more clubs coming. I've been in correspondence with Kieran Parsons, who's a teacher at Cromwell College. We met through a networking event at the when Connect Cromwell were dishing out some funding for startups. He's looking at the feasibility for a bouldering wall or a climbing club, which Cromwell as yet doesn't have, but they're keen to start. So I've started talking with him on his best avenue to get in touch with this board, with the council, with groups, users that may work, and putting people in touch. And on the back of that and several other discussions, we've reignited a conversation about the sports hub model sitting under Sport NZ, and how we can get that going in Cromwell to actually bring all of these clubs together and make a pathway moving forward, bringing in new sports, bringing in new people, consolidating what we do and making that regional, not just Cromwell focused. But that's pretty exciting. We've got a tentative date in August for an evening where there'll be speakers brought in to talk about junior sport, but also to get all those clubs together and look at a roadmap for where we are and where we're going and what we do. So it's pretty exciting. And on that, Steve Shaw, I would like to mention that in the King's Birthday Honours this year, Steve was recognised for his service. First line was to the fire brigade, but he hasn't put out any fires at my house. My dealings with him have been through hockey. He was chairman of the Central Otago Hockey for a few years, and I was his vice president. So he was president. I was his VP for a few years there and spent a lot of time working. Great guy, awesome to see him acknowledged for all the work he does. Cromwell is very lucky to have so many people like Steve here doing so much, but great to see him get that accolade.
Absolutely, and my first contact with Steve was through swimming.
Right, yeah, and it's going on. So as is much the same for many families in Cromwell, lots of people do lots of things for lots of sports, but that's something that we need to be aware. People are very time poor now, so it's, crossing those sports I've like to talk about today is really more important than ever to keep people involved. Yeah, that's me for this month.
Yeah, Holly.
Well, since the last meeting, I've said my 4 cents worth for the Plan Change 19 hearings. Just try and keep up with those sorts of things. I've been to a few mountain bike club dig nights on Wednesday nights out of Bannockburn and making good progress out there. Been to a couple of Connect Cromwell meetings as we're moving towards winding that group up. Last Wednesday I went to the Alpine Street Machines AGM, partially testing the waters to see if they'll let an English car near them. I went to the Cromwell Business Breakfast up at Scott Base, and it was probably, oh, we'll say there's 20 people.
Oh, okay, that's more than I'd heard, so that's,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah, it was quite, must have been ages ago, because it was quite warm. It was like ages ago.
Yeah, that's not how you could describe it out there at the moment. And be like,
No. No. And similar to there, I've been soccer on Sundays, except for a couple of trips to Fiordland. And I've had two different people approach me on different angles about the Rippenvale Hall. So I'll, it's not a council asset, but it's I don't know, maybe a discussion has to be had about it with the current incorporated facility that runs it. So that's just a thing that's happened. That'd be my report.
you?
Cromwell meeting. They're still suffering from the, one of the buildings that used to be the old office, they're still suffering from these power surges. With that, they're now getting a consultant in to put some kind of gadget on to try and monitor it. It's actually very, very bad. Apart from the fact that it flickers, it then just goes dark. So if you're actually looking there, it's quite an uncomfortable environment to be in. So that's something that needs to be resolved for them. The insurance has gone through the roof. And they don't get full, they're only on indemnity insurance for one of the buildings until it's been upgraded. So that's something that we're looking to fix. So then on the 30th we went to council. No, on the 30th it was the interviews with the CEO, the new CEO, so that was the 30th. Then on the 31st it was council. In the public forum there was several people that were just there to talk about the felling of the trees on Half Mile Reserve. Quite interesting listening to Carmen Batchelor from Presbyterian Support. She was letting us know that people are suffering out there, and if it can be, perhaps we need to look at rates relief, give them a bit of assistance. Matt Sol was also there. He spoke on climate, population, employment and population abuse, ecological disruption, land conservation. Actually, he was quite interesting. He's very passionate about what he talks about, but it was quite interesting, and we should be more aware. There was a report on obviously the community outcomes and the community ideas for the draft 2024-34 long-term plan. There was an update on the Three Waters Better Off funding, and there was also an update on the compliance. There was also a report on the resurfacing of the Alexandra Airport runway, and there was another report regarding the internal audit program and some fairly hefty associated costs through that process. On the 6th, council was lucky enough to be welcomed onto the marae down at Otago Peninsula, which was it was very interesting. It was quite fascinating. It was absolutely stunning place, absolutely beautiful, and we were welcomed, and there was some very interesting conversations. Nice to see how they want to continue the relationship and build on that relationship. So that was really interesting. The next day, we were also very lucky to attend the Otago Museum and visited the planetarium, which was fascinating. I would have gone to sleep on it.
It doesn't make that sound so fascinating. I was nearly asleep.
But it was fascinating, and we were also really lucky to have some presentation on the Encida moa.
Yeah, we got up close and personal.
Yeah. So watch this space. It's absolutely fabulous. And then we had a tour of the basement to see other collections. which again, I thought was absolutely fabulous. You can really see they are struggling for space and they are struggling for continued financial support. So, and it is so valuable. Then I went to, obviously we had the workshop on the town centre, and then last week was the old Cromwell meeting again. So that's me. Thank you.
Have a mover and a second in this, please. Thank you, Wally. Thank you, Bob. All in favour?
All right.
That takes us to page 51 and the governance report, the first part of which includes the draft Harris Community Plan as an appendix. I know that's a piece of work that has been going over some time. It's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Done a good job on that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not here for us to say, well done, we've been an awesome job. Working with the
Write it down.
Sharon,
Read it.
Yes, it wasn't Rebecca McElroy that prepared this one.
No, because on that I'm the all and rec person. I can't ever remember which specific Terrace role I have.
Yeah.
But as a community, they have been really great to deal with, really responsive to me going along to anything that they have that it's appropriate. I've had several members of the community just get in touch randomly, say come for a coffee, have a chat. Had a good length of time with Rebecca McElroy, talking airports, but I went to a couple of hall and rec meetings, and they're really keen to be recognised as a community of their own within our borough. And I think giving them that identity will actually secure them as a part of the Cromwell ward more so by giving them that autonomy. So that's really
crossover with them identifying as Upper Clotho, isn't there, with some things.
I think I'm this way, aren't they? Yeah, like with the school bus goes, the school Mac and things like that. But as a community, I think this is really consolidating that they are part of our region without just being a little enclave of Cromwell. I think it's really important. It's really good.
It is good. It's a nicely put together document that
Yeah.
I should be really proud of.
The one thing I noticed actually about this, I read this through, it's a great piece of work. I kind of detected a little bit of a friction there between them and Sustainable Terrace. You know, this group and Sustainable Terrace. Did anybody else pick that up or not?
Anything covert.
I thought it.
Yes.
Maybe I'm reading too much into it.
Yeah,
Maybe.
quite divisive, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Depending on where the Sustainable Terrace is. Yeah.
Yes, I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of the community. I have just currently, Rachel Hazelgrave, who was the principal there, has picked up a position with the Ministry of Education, so they're just currently advertising for recruiting for a new principal out there, so that would be a big change for them. She's been there for 6 years now.
That's a shame for the school.
Yeah, she's been really good in that community.
Will she be staying in Terrace?
No.
Her husband's just taken over the rubbish run. Does she not realise they've got commitments?
I'm actually here till the end of next term. So
Well, Andrew needs to find somebody to hand the keys over before we can. Excuse me a minute.
She is taken on the role as Education Advisor, Ministry of Education, North Dunedin and North Otago.
Wow. That's a shame for Tara.
Oh, it's amazing, but a great opportunity for her. Yeah. At bottom of that, keep on scrolling, and that is our status reports. Anything from the status reports we know about the all repeating?
Yeah, that's. But I mean, well, this is, I don't know. Something. Anyway.
Come here, for gossip. Do you know?
No.
No,
Ah,
got my head in junior hockey.
I just wondered if that was going to go ahead, the extension to the new laws.
I think it's the parent company that wants the extension, so.
Yeah.
So it will still go ahead.
Mm.
That's interesting.
Just been so.
Yeah.
Secrets.
So if there's nothing to discuss other than whether or not the supermarket's recently sold, that would take us back to page 51.
You're very good supporters of all.
I didn't know that.
Sporting, so I hope that's who you
Great supporters of the
community full stop, yeah.
To the recommendation that the report will be received. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Cheryl. All in favour?
Aye.
Okay, that takes us to page 112 and the date of the next meeting.
Yep, July. I can, this is
Skip July, yeah.
yeah, 112. That
Liz, sorry, we've lost my way with the terrace report.
yeah, those.
112, the date of our next meeting is scheduled for the 1st of August.
Got the diary.
Super, and then that takes us to page 113, which is the resolution to exclude the public so that we can discuss town centre project, town and country building project, and the June confidential governance law. And may recommend that we take a 5-minute break, comfort break, and to, oh, sorry, I need to move in a second.
I will do one more even.
Thank you, Sarah and Bob.
Well, ahead of schedule. What's going on here?
Gillespie's not here.
I wasn't going to say it out loud, but somebody did. How about that?
Oh, we turned off.